Good morning, good morning. All right, let's continue on with LDS stories of faith and courage. Courage. The indefinable feeling that you must do what you should despite your fear. Anyways, this time we're talking about exploring Arizona for settlement. And I know I've alluded to at the end of last time that this will be cool because I had a lot of ancestors and cousins and such that were part of this, and I actually still have a bunch of cousins down in Arizona. So here we go. This is by Daniel W. Jones. In the summer of 1875, President Brigham Young selected a group of hardy young men of faith and courage to explore Arizona for suitable settlements by the Latter-day Saints. The story of their experience is well told by their leader. It was agreed, instead of going by railroad and ocean to Mexico, that we would fit up the pack and saddle animals to go through and explore Arizona on our trip. At this time, there was but little known by our people of Arizona. Even Salt River Valley was not known by the head men. Hardly able-bodied men of faith and energy were wanted for the trip. Sorry, not hardly. Hardy able-bodied men of faith and energy were wanted for the trip. Besides myself, there were selected J. Z. Stewart, Helaman Pratt, Wiley C. Jones, my son, R. H. Smith, M. Tenney, and A. W. Ivins. The book of 100 pages containing excerpts from the Book of Mormon in Spanish was now ready, being bound in paper. About the 1st of September, 1875, we appointed to meet at Nephi and start from there with pack animals. Two of the company, being in the extreme south, were to join us at Kanab. We left Nephi about the 10th of September, and with our books, some 2,000 packed on mules. Oh, the books, 2,000 books packed on mules. We started out. We had a good outfit for the trip. The people of the settlements, as we passed along, assisted us in every way. Some additions were made to our outfit. One place, Cedar City, gave so much dried fruit that it became necessary for us to have another pack mule, which was readily furnished. We stopped a short time at Tokerville, where Brother Ivans joined us. From here, we went to Kanab, where our company was completed by Brother Tenney joining. The route chosen was by the way of Lee's Ferry, thence to the Moquis villages. Brother Tenney, having been to these villages some years before, was to be our guide to that point, after which we were to make our way through an unknown country the best we could. Our instructions were to explore the Little Colorado. Some few years previous to this, a large company had been called to go and settle Arizona. They had penetrated beyond the Colorado, some 45 miles, but finding no water, had all returned except one small company under Brother John Blythe, the name of which, as far as obtained, are David V. Bennett, William Solomon, Ira Hatch, James Mangrum, the Thomas Smith and Son, and these remained doing all they could to carry out the design of the mission until circumstances caused their honorable release. Their history and experience there would make quite a chapter, but I cannot claim the right or memory to record it. One little incident I will relate to show how I came to be called to explore Arizona in connection with this mission to Mexico, which would have been made in an easier way than traveling so far with pack mules. I was in President Young's office one day when several others were present. Brother W.C. Staines came in and was telling about having heard a Brother McMaster of the 11th Ward relate a remarkable occurrence whilst on his first Arizona trip. Brother McMaster's statement, as told by Brother Staines, was that there were several hundred persons with teams in a perishing condition. They had passed some 45 miles beyond Colorado, and no water could be found. Someone had gone up on the Little Colorado and found that entirely dry. Brother McMaster, being a chaplain, went out and pled with the Lord for water. Soon there was a fall of rain and snow depositing plenty of water for the cattle and to fill up all their barrels. They were camped in a rocky place where there were many small holes that soon filled up. In the morning, all were refreshed, barrels filled up, all turned back rejoicing in the goodness of the Lord in the saving them from perishing. They returned to Salt Lake and reported Arizona uninhabitable. I still agree with them. So, if you know Arizona and its topography, the northern half contains the Grand Canyon, and because that's higher in elevation, the upper rims of the Grand Canyon and up in Flagstaff and stuff, you get snow, but that is actually a pleasant enough area. It's when, as they say, you go beyond the Colorado, when you go beyond the Grand Canyon, that but that's exactly where they put Phoenix and Mesa. So, after Brother Staines had finished, some remarks were made by different ones. I was sitting nearby, and just in front of Brother Brigham, I had just been telling him something about my labors among the Indians. He said nothing for a few moments, but sat looking me straight in the eye. Finally, he asked, "What do you think of that, Brother Jones?" I answered, "I would have filled up, gone on, and prayed again." Brother Brigham replied, putting his hand upon me, "This is the man that shall take charge of the next trip to Arizona." Here you go, brother. Not long after crossing Colorado, we were overtaken by an Indian, bringing us a telegram from President Young, sent to Kanab directing us to visit Salt River Valley, as he had been informed something about it since our departure. This changed our intended direction somewhat, as we were intending to make towards the Rio Grande, a country that I was acquainted with. On arriving at Maquis villages, the Indians were much pleased to see us and very friendly. Their country and villages had been described so well and often that I will say but little about them. They are a peaceable, honest class, dwelling in villages that have been very ancient appearance, situated on high bluffs, facing a dry, sandy plain, and distant some 60 miles from the little Colorado River. The Indians farm by catching the rainwater which runs down from the hills and conduct it upon more sandy spots, thus gathering moisture enough to mature beans, pumpkins, early corn, melons, and a few other early vegetables. They have a number of peach trees that grow in the sand ridges, bearing a very good fruit, of which they dry the most. They save and eat everything they possibly can. They own quite a number of horses, sheep, and goats. They seem to be happy, well fed, and contented, making some blankets and clothing of a rude kind. And as there may be readers of this work more interested in the travels and the country through which we were engaged, for their benefit I'll describe our outfit and mode of travel. On leaving Kanab, there were 7 of us with saddle animals. Brother Pratt rode a contrary mule. We had some 14 head of pack animals. Wow, okay, so, yeah, okay. Our books were in convenient bales for packing. Our provisions, which were ample, were put in uniform-sized canvas bags. There was 1 mule for water kegs, 1 horse for kitchen traps. The latter was well suited for his position, for nothing would excite him. We had to depend entirely on the grass to sustain our animals, as we could not carry grain for them. In the early travels of Western explorers, grass was the only feed. It was much more fresh and abundant than at the present time. Now, throughout the Western country, almost every watering place is occupied by the ranchman's cattle. At night, our animals were hoppled and turned out. When any danger was experienced, we would guard them. If there was no danger, we went to bed and hunted them up in the morning. Sometimes this was quite a labor. We had 1 span of mules that seemed determined to get back to Utah. We tried many times to hamper them, sometimes with seeming success, but they soon learned to travel side or cross-hoppled, or in one tied to the other. Most of us were old travelers. That is, we had all had considerable experience in handling animals in camp. These mules showed more cunning and perseverance than any we had seen before. Once they traveled with hopples some 16 miles. I happened to strike their trail first. After tracking them about 5 miles, I found Ammon Tenney's saddle horse with a few other animals. I managed to catch the horse, and with nothing but my suspenders for a bridle, I followed on alone until I overtook the mules. They tried to run away from me, but I managed to head them back and drove them several miles before daring to take the hopples off. The horse I was riding was quite sharp-backed. By this time, not like the king who cried, "My kingdom for a horse," I thought, "My kingdom for a saddle." Oh. So I commenced to study how to make one, and I succeeded finally. I took off my overalls, put some hair out of the horse's tail, and tied the bottom of the legs together, then pulled the grass and stuffed the overalls full of both legs and body. This formed a pad fast at both ends, but separate in the middle. This is the place lengthwise on the back of the horse with the body end forward, so that I could hold the waistband together with one hand and keep the grass from working out. Under the circumstances, this made me quite comfortable. Better than nothing. And I drove the mules back to camp all right. My companions laughed heartily as I rode in, but acknowledged that I was a good saddler. A few nights after we were discussing these mules, Brother Tenney proposed that we tie each mule to the other's tail. This worked like a charm. We had no further trouble. They simply followed each other round and got their fill of travel without going very far from camp. There was some uneasiness felt by Brothers Tenney and Ivans about meeting the Indians who had killed Dr. Whitmore, as they had never come in to make peace with the Mormon settlements. As we neared Moabi, we were all somewhat anxious and kept a good lookout. Brother Tenney knew these Indians well and said he would be able to recognize them from any others. The Navajos, who had formerly been hostile, were now at peace and coming in to trade for horses, but the Indians dreaded were still supposed to be on the warpath. On arriving at Moabi, we camped near the edge of some willows, keeping a good watch. We made an early camp shortly before sundown. Brother Tenney, who was on the alert, suddenly said, "Here they are. We are in for it." At this time, about 20 Indians on horseback showed themselves 200 yards from us. They came somewhat slyly out of the willows. Brother Tenney recognized them at once as the hostiles. I told him to make friendly signs and tell them to approach, as he talked their language well. I told the rest to be ready but make no moves. Brother Tenney and I stepped unarmed out from the willows and walked a little way in the direction of the Indians. They approached us slowly. Brother Tenney told them to come on as we were friends. We stood waiting for them to approach us. When they came up, we shook hands. I was introduced as a Mormon captain who was a great friend to the Indians, one who never wanted to fight them, and had a good heart for the Indian race. Really, I felt no fear, for we were sent out as messengers of peace to this very people. I still believe in bringing I believed in being prudent and not giving them a chance to get the advantage of us, for this band of Indians were noted for their treachery, even by other Indian tribes. Like most Indians, they wanted to know if we had anything to eat. I told them we had, and if they would do as I wanted them to, that I would give them a good supper. They agreed to do so. I showed them where to make their camp some 25 yards from ours in an open spot. I told them that my men were not acquainted with them and were a little afraid, and that they must not go near them. But Brother Tenney and I knew them and were not afraid of them. I told 2 of the Indians to bring some wood to our camp, which they did. I also told them to get their wood and water and turn their horses out with ours and get everything ready for the night, so that we would not want to leave their camp after dark, as our men might be scared if they moved about then. We had an abundance of provisions, so we gave them a good, hearty supper. Brother Tenney and I talked with them until bedtime. They said they had desired to make peace with the Mormons, but were afraid to come in. I agreed to give them a paper next morning stating that we had met them and that they desired peace. Our party laid on their arms all night, watching these Indians. None slept. They kept faith with us, and not one of them stirred during the night. We had breakfast early in the morning, and sent two of the Indians to bring up our animals. We gave them some more provisions, wrote their recommend, and then started on, leaving the Indians cooking their breakfast. We saw no more of them. I never heard of them committing any depredations afterwards. That's good. We visited a few days with the Moquis, who received us very kindly. After taking into consideration our instructions to visit Salt River Valley, we tried to hire an Indian to pilot us across the country to the Little Colorado River, wishing to strike it as the nearest point. We were told that there was no water on the route. No one seemed to want the job to guide us. Finally, an Indian was found who said he would go for a certain number of silver dollars. We agreed to give him his price. We packed up, filled our water kegs, and started out in the afternoon. The guide was to come on in the morning and overtake us. We traveled a few miles and camped. Next morning the guide came up, but demanded more pay. We finally consented. We had traveled but a short distance when he demanded another advance. This we did not feel inclined to make, so Brother Tenney told him we could get along without him. He then turned back. There was no trail. We took a southerly direction, trusting to our own judgment to get through. After traveling a few hours, we approached near some hills where the country looked like there might be water. We turned off from our direction, went up into the hills, and found a spring of good fresh water. We refilled our kegs and watered our stock. It was somewhat difficult as the banks were steep and the water was a foot or more below the surface. All our stock drank, except the little Mexican burro that would not approach the spring. We all got around him and pushed him up to the brink several times, but he'd slip away from us. We knew he was thirsty, but donkey-like he would not drink. At length we grabbed hold of him, lifted him clear of the ground, and put him in the middle of the spring, where he stood quite still, but would not drink. So he beat us after all. He is the personification of you can lead a, well, in this case, mule to water, but you can't make him drink. Wow. We named the spring Tussle Jack. I doubt if anyone has been there since. On leaving this place, we were forced by formation of the country to bear in a westerly direction. Soon we struck dim trails. Following along, we came to some water holes in a ravine, but passed on. The trails soon giving out, we again turned south. At night, we made dry camp. Traveled next morning about 2 miles, still no trail. We found some water, but it was barely sufficient to water our animals. We continued traveling all day without trail. Toward night, we came to a large, dry wash with cottonwoods growing along it. Having heard that the Little Colorado was subject to drying up, we thought this was perhaps the dry bed of the river. If so, we were in a bad fix, for there was no knowing when we would reach water. Brother Ivans, having a good horse, rode out on a high hill to look for signs of the river ahead. The sun was just setting. He helloed back that he could see the river a few miles farther on. This news was received with a shout of joy. We started on, traveling with the stars for guides. The country became quite rough and broken. It was with much difficulty that we finally descended from the bluffs to the river bottom. We had to travel some time before getting to water. We struck the bottom at the bend of the river, where the direction of the stream was the same as our direction of travel. At length we got water from where grass and wood were plentiful. All felt happy, for here we knew by information that we would soon strike the main road leading to Prescott, Arizona. We had a map of this road and country. We had been traveling for some time through strange country, but little known some of it, even to the natives. We now felt as though we could get along with less anxiety. We remained a few days looking at the country farther up the river, so as to be able to report to President Young, which we did as soon as we found a chance to mail our letters. Now, we took the wagon road leading from the Rio Grande to Prescott, followed by a westerly direction, and soon reached the Mogollon Mountains. Is that really what they were called? Mogollon. Oh. So the Mogollon Mountains. The first night out from the Little Colorado, we camped at a mail station which had 2 men in charge. They gave us considerable information about the country. Next day, we reached Pine Station, a place then deserted. Here we met 2 men from Phoenix, Salt River Valley, a Dr. Warden and a Mr. McNulty. They had come out to meet their families who were moving into Arizona. The night was cold and stormy. Next day, as the same, so we laid over and had a good visit with these gentlemen. They were 2 of the most prominent men in Phoenix. McNulty was a county clerk for several years. They both still live in the country. They were always kind and friendly to our people and never forgot our first friendly acquaintance in the lonely camp on the Wild Mountain Road. Okay, this is getting interesting. I want to look up the map here real quick. Where's Prescott and what way were they traveling? Because sometimes, it's really nice to have a visual of the maps. Because I like geography. Woohoo! So let's go Prescott, Arizona. So that's where they're traveling. Let's turn this into this. And where's the Little Colorado? So Prescott, all right, is still in northern Arizona, up in the hills. You can see by that red dot. That's where Prescott is. You can see the southern part of Utah, where they would have stopped at Cedar City and such. So it sounds like they went around the Colorado River, or at least they went around the Grand Canyon. I'm wondering if the Little Colorado River is, or at least that's where they're headed, is Prescott. What about the Little Colorado River? Okay, so the Little Colorado River is a tiny little tributary river that, which way is that going? Kind of goes east and westerly direction and contributes into the Big Colorado River. Okay, got it. So the road follows this canyon by no, not the Little Colorado there, but okay. So they're on the Grand Canyon. You see that little break off, the tiny little tendril there? That's the Little Colorado River. And I suspect they would have passed that near Cameron or something like that. Because as it continues on, there's Cameron. That's where it would have been more like the plains. So they must have crossed somewhere around there. So they would have gone from Cedar City into central Utah, because they were talking about being in Kanab. So they may have gone around the whole area that way. And now they're heading to Prescott. So they're kind of cutting across the hills up in northern Arizona to then go down into the Valley of Phoenix and such. But let's continue on. Just wanted to get that visual in. All right. So we left our letter at the first mail station. We got the direction from these gentlemen as to the shortest and best route to Salt River, and as there were no natives to visit or country suitable for settling before reaching Phoenix, we concluded to take the shortest route. We were now traveling through country that was considered somewhat dangerous, for more from outlaws than Indians. The Apaches, having been driven from their former haunts, were now occupying reservations at Bowie, San Carlos Camp Apache, where they had recently been located by the management of General Crook. While crossing the Mogollon Mountains, the weather was quite cold. As we descended toward the lower valley, the temperature changed very rapidly. Instead of overcoats, we soon hunted shade trees. Yeah, like I said, Arizona. We were much surprised on entering Salt River Valley. We had traveled through deserts and mountains, with the exception of the little Colorado Valley, a place which we did not particularly admire. For a long ways now, there opened before us a sight truly lovely. A fertile-looking soil and miles of level plain. In the distance, the green cottonwood trees, and what made the country look more real was the thrifty little settlement of Phoenix, with its streets already planted with shade trees for miles. Strange as it may seem, at the time we started in September of 1875, the valley of Salt River was not known even to Brigham Young. Our animals were beginning to fail, as they had lived on grass since leaving Kanab. We bought corn at 4 cents a pound and commenced feeding them a little. Although Salt River Valley is naturally fertile, owing to the dryness of the climate, there is no grass except a little coarse stuff called saccaton. We camped on the north side of the river. On making inquiry, we learned that Tempe, or Hayden's Mill, 7 miles farther up the river, would be a better place to stop for a few days than Phoenix. C.T. Hayden, being one of the oldest and most enterprising settlers of the country, had built a grist mill, started ranches, opened up a store, blacksmith, wagon shop, etc. Nice. As we were passing through Phoenix, we met a few Indians, Maricopas and Pimas. I called one of them to me and asked him if he understood Mexican. He said he did. I told him who we were and that our mission was to talk to the natives, that we wished to get the Pimas and Maricopas together over on the Gila, and talk to them. He said, "All right, how much will you pay me to go and notify them?" I replied, "We will pay you nothing. We are not traveling for money. We are here more for the good of your people than for our own. You can go and tell them or not, just as you please." He said that he understood who we were and would go to tell the Indians about us. On arriving at Hayden's place, we found the owner an agreeable, intelligent gentleman who was much interested in the settlement and development of the country, as well as friendly toward the Mormons. He, being a pioneer in reality, having been for many years in the West, and could fully sympathize with the Mormon people in settling deserts. He gave us much true and useful information about the country and natives. Here we traded off some of our pack mules and surplus provisions. We had already traded for a light spring wagon, finding that the country before us could be traveled with wagons. We remained here a few days, camping at the ranch of Mr. Winchester Miller. His barley was up several inches high, but he allowed us to turn our animals into his fields and treated us in kind, hospitable manner. Wow, that is really kind. The friendly acquaintance made at this time has always been kept. Mr. Miller was an energetic man and manifested a great desire to have the Mormons come there and settle. He had already noticed the place where the Jonesville's ditch is now located. He told me about it, saying it was the best ditch site on the river. What he said has proved true. We wrote to President Young describing the country. After resting a few days, we started for Gila. I'm sorry, I'm used to Gila monsters, so which is spelled with a G. But yeah, Gila, Gila. Striking it at Morgan's Station. This was near the lower villages of the Pimas. The Indians had heard of us and wanted to hear us talk. We did not say much at this place, but told the Indians we would stop at Saccaton, the upper settlement, and have a good talk with the people, and that we hoped to meet all the leading men of the tribe. Next day, we traveled up along the north side of the river Gila, passing a number of the Pima villages, talking a few words, and giving out our appointment. Most of the way there was no road, and sometimes it was rather difficult to get along with our carriage. We arrived that night at Twin Buttes, or Hayden's trading station. Here quite a number of Indians came to see us, and we had a pleasant talk with them. It was here I met for the first time an Indian named Francisco Chico, who spoke Spanish quite well. This man will appear again in this history. Next day, early, we arrived at Saccaton. There was no feed except a little grass among the thorny bushes on the river bottom. There was a trader here, doing quite a business. I went to his store and asked him if he had any hay or fodder for sale. He looked at me in surprise and said, "Mister, that is something the country don't produce." "Then, what are the travelers to do that wish to stop over here for a few days?" I asked. "There are no travelers with any sense that want to go and stop over here. You'd better pack up and go on. You can fodder up at Juan Largos near Florence, but there is none here." I answered, "Well, we want to stop, and we'll have to put up with what there is. I see there is a little grass among the brush. We will have to feed all the more grain, but we can get plenty of that, I suppose." "You had better not stay," he said. "If you turn your stock out, they'll be stolen from you. I've lived here 10 years. I'm friendly with the Indians, but they are the biggest thieves you ever saw. I tell you not to trust them. There are some poor people now in camp down there, 2 men and a woman, that they have it as D thieves. Oh, the darned. Yep. The darned thieves have stolen their stock and will not fetch it back unless they pay them $5 a head. And as they have not got the money, they are in a bad fix. The Indians will serve you the same way." We concluded that here was a chance to commence to the work and do some good. We made camp in an opening among the brush. Soon, quite a number of Indians collected around camp. I told them to take our animals and watch them until night, then bring them in for their corn. We put a bell on one of the animals. I told the Indians not to take them so far we could not hear the bell. We went back to the traders for some grain. I told him what we had done. He said I was like other smart Alecs that had just come among the Indians, but that we would be in the same fix as the party who had lost their stock. I told him we would not lose one of our animals, but that I believed I could induce the Indians to return those they had stolen from their poor people. He said, "You must either be crazy or in collusion with the Indians." I told him we were neither. At feeding time, all the animals were brought in. After feeding them, they were again turned over to the Indians. Next morning, all were brought in, this being the day appointed for the meeting. About 10 o'clock, the Indians commenced gathering. We found an excellent interpreter in Francisco Acapula. He seemed quite intelligent and ready to comprehend what we told him. We talked quite a while with the interpreter before requesting the people to listen to us. Finally, there gathered between 300 and 400. We were told that all the captains had arrived and were ready to listen to what we had to say. I told the interpreter to explain to them that what we had been telling him. He talked quite a while in the Pima tongue, in an earnest, spirited manner. When he got through, a few remarks were made by some of the old men. The interpreter told us they were much interested in what they had heard and wished me to talk more and tell them about their forefathers. Said they knew nothing about them, but they always understood that sometime there would be those coming among them who knew all about these things. Now that's interesting. Imagine that you are a group of people who are somewhat nomadic and having to, and you have lost the knowledge of what your ancestors were, but you still knew that someone would come that would have that knowledge. That's pretty cool. I now felt it was my time to get the animals which had been stolen from the poor travelers. These people were sitting in sight looking very much disheartened. I pointed to them and told the Indians it made me feel sorrowful to see those poor people there, and that it weighed on my heart so that I could not talk, and that I wished some of the young men would go and hunt their stock up. I never hinted that I thought they had stolen them away. After this, there was some little side talk among the Indians. The interpreter asked me to go on and talk to the people. The Indians got very much interested when I commenced to explain to them the Book of Mormon. I will here say that in all my labors among the Indians, I've never known of one failing to be interested when the Book of Mormon was introduced. These Pimas were intelligent and capable of understanding all we said to them. I then again referred to the disagreeable subject, telling them that I still felt grieved. One of the chiefs spoke up, asking me to go on, as the stock had been found and were being brought to the owners. I now felt free to talk and gave them much instruction. Brother Tenney, being a good interpreter, having a much experience among the natives of Lower California, explained with much clearness the gospel of repentance to these people. A good spirit prevailed, and the Indians manifested a desire to be instructed, acknowledged their degraded, acknowledged their degraded condition, and said they wished the Mormons would come to their country to live and teach them how to do. We all felt well paid for the hardship we had gone through, for we could see here was a chance for the good work to be done. We were in no way annoyed. Our animals were watched and brought in regularly to feed. When we got ready to start on everything was in good shape, we bade the Indians goodbye, promising that the Mormons would visit them again, and some of them would probably come and live in their country. The trader never knew how to account for our way of doing with the Pimas. From here, we went a day's travel farther up the Gila to Juan Largos villages. Juan, a Papago Indian, presided over a large settlement of his people. His son was educated so as to read. We gave him a copy of our book. These extracts from the Book of Mormon we had been presenting to a few of the Indians and some of the Mexicans on our road. Many years afterwards, the Indians showed me these books. They prized them highly. At Juan Largos, the people came together, and we taught them the same as we had the Pimas. Francisco Capula went to this village with us. He became much interested in our teachings. His home was in Sonora. He was here only to visit. We have often heard of him, but had never seen him once. We found that many of the older Indians on the Gila remembered the Mormon battalion that passed through their country in 1846. On leaving Gila, our route led to Tucson. We crossed the 85-mile desert, where the battalion suffered so much for water. When we crossed, there were 2 wells furnishing good, pure water. One 200 feet deep, where there was, wow, back in the day before they had 200 feet deep well, wow. That's A, very deep, and B, doing that without, modern convenience drilling. Jeez Louise. One 200 feet deep, where there was a small stock ranch and station. For support, the owner sold water to travelers. At Tucson, we received a letter from Brigham Young, from which I will give a short extract, dated at Salt Lake City, November 8, 1875. Since your departure from Salt Lake City on your way southward, more than 150 have been called to aid in the building of the kingdom of God in various parts of the earth. Among these, a party have started in charge of Elder James S. Brown, who intends to winter somewhere in the neighborhood of Moenkopi, without a more suitable place is found, and from there spread out as opportunity offers. At Tucson, we found quite a number of white residents. This old town has been so well described by many writers that I will simply say it never was, is not now, and never will be much. I wonder how big it is compared to what they saw then. Its only merit is in being so very old, some 271 years. Our intention has been to go from Tucson to Sonora, but at the time there was hot revolution underway, and everything was in confusion. There was no safety for anyone entering the country. All right, so where's Tucson compared to Sonora? Let's take a look. There's Phoenix. Okay, Tucson is southeast of that, and I'm sure it's a lot bigger than what is Phoenix. Okay, so there's Phoenix, there's Tucson. You can see Tucson is a little more spread out, but definitely much smaller than Phoenix, of course. And that's Tucson is starting to get pretty close to the border with Mexico. Where's Sonora? There's Sedona. I wonder if it's Sonora, Mexico. It is. Okay. So, for example, we got the red border, which is the American border. So you have Tucson, and the red dot is where we're saying Sonora is. Although I think that's just kind of the state of Sonora. So Hermosillo is the main city in Sonora, because I think Sonora is just the state of Mexico because it's the red border. Anyway, So now you can see, so they've traveled through Arizona and they're trying to go south to Mexico. Yeah, and there was a revolution in Mexico. So we had a letter of introduction from C.T. Hayden of Tempe to Governor Safford, who resided in Tucson. We had a pleasant visit with His Excellency. Mr. Safford is much respected by the inhabitants of Arizona, he having been the framer of the Arizona public school system, which is acknowledged to be excellent. From the governor, we received a letter to Mr. Jeffries, the Indian agent at Apache Pass. We were invited to preach in the courthouse at Tucson, and we had a good attendance and attention. The Police Gazette had me pictured out as being rotten-egged by... What? Really? So they preached at the Tucson courthouse, had good attendance and attention, but the Police Gazette had me pictured out as being rotten-egged by a lot of women while preaching in the town in Arizona. Tucson was the only town we preached in Arizona while on this mission. So much for sensational reports. Huh. Well, great. Here these guys are exploring ways to get to Arizona to help colonize it. And one of the biggest settlements that the Saints did was Mesa. And now that's what's grown into the Mesa, Gilbert, Arizona. Those were huge settlements that the Saints did that grew, obviously. I mean, it's now like just incorporated into the whole Phoenix Valley kind of stuff. But yeah. Anyways, owing to the unsettled state of affairs in Sonora, we concluded to go farther east and visit El Paso. Okay, so Texas. And then go into the state of Chihuahua. Our mixed outfit, both wagon and pack animals, were inconvenient, and as the roads were good, we concluded to get another wagon. Having sold some of our animals, we had money to spare. So we bought an excellent wagon from a quartermaster at the post near Tucson. We now had a good outfit. Our wagons took the place of pack animals, but we retained our saddled horses. The next place of importance to which we looked forward with some anxiety was Fort Bowie. On arriving, we presented our letters to Jeffries, who was in charge of the reservation at Bowie, but the Indians seemed to be in charge of both Jeffries and several companies of soldiers stationed there, for the Indians did about as they pleased. It was considered somewhat risky to pass through the Apache Pass. According to an agreement made at Beaver with D.H. Wells to be careful, we camped a day's travel outside this side of the Indians, and with one of the brethren went in to see how things looked. I felt a little uneasy. The Indians were under no control whatever, save that of self-interest. The government gave them everything they wanted and more. They had provisions of every kind so abundantly that a great deal was wasted. They had all the guns and ammunition they wanted and were allowed to raid at will into Sonora and Chihuahua. It was generally believing that they were encouraged by some of the whites in their raiding. When I talked with the agent, he said we were safe enough if we did not happen to run across any drunken Indians on the road. But as the weather was cold and disagreeable, he did not think any of them would be out. Advised us to stop at the mail station near the fort and not turn out any animals. We went back to camp and reported. All felt like we would be safe. We all had faith in being protected, for we are on a mission, not of our own choosing. We got in the next day all right. Our animals needed shoeing, so we concluded to lay over a day. I had a great desire to talk to these Indians, believing that they would listen a little. I made some inquiry of a trader who had been with them for some years about their traditions. He said they had none, only to murder and steal. This I found afterwards to be a great mistake. Yeah. I asked Mr. Jeffries' permission to talk to the Indians. He rather jeeringly replied, "I don't think you can get them to listen to you. I am the only man they'll talk to." I answered, "All I ask is your permission, and if they won't listen to me, all right." He said, "Go ahead. I guess you can't make them much worse than they are anyway." Wow. I inquired if any of the Indians talked Spanish. Their interpreter, a drunken little Mexican, offered to interpret if I would pay him, saying that that was his business and that no one had a right to talk to the Indians except through him. I told him that the agent had given me privilege of talking to them, that I was not working for money, and that I did not intend to pay for any interpreting. He then pointed out an Indian that spoke tolerably fair Spanish. I approached the Indian and spoke to him. He answered quite short and asked what I wanted. I told him that I wanted to say to him was for his people's good. That if he would listen to me a few minutes, he could then judge. He looked me in the eye for a moment and then said, "All right, say what you please." I asked him if the Apaches had any knowledge of their fathers, counting back many counts. He answered that they had lost that they did not know anything about them. I showed him one of our books and informed him that it told about their old fathers. At this, he got up and called a lot of other Indians that were loafing around. Some 30 or 40 soon gathered around me. I commenced to explain considerable to them, that they were growing and wished new country, that we would perhaps, I commenced to explain considerable to them. They were growing and wished new country, that we would perhaps approaching. They seemed to understand that my words were not for the agent's ears, and manifested as much by their remarks. So I changed the subject and said that Mormons had also sent us to look for country to settle, as we were growing and wished new country. That's interesting. I think I found a major typo. I think they took that sentence that I just read from its proper spot, transposed it up there. So let me continue on, sorry. So I changed the subject to the more growing and wished new country. That we would perhaps settle near them, that we were friends to the red man and hoped the Apaches would be friendly with us. The agent had approached near enough to hear this talk. He stayed around, giving me no further chance to explain the Book of Mormon to them. He made some remarks to call their attention away from me. I could see plainly that he wished me to stop talking. So I told the Indians we would meet again sometime. I felt that I had made a little impression for good upon them. Sometime after this, I had a good long talk with the Apaches, which I will give an account of in the proper place. We had a vague idea of the western portion of Chihuahua, where the Mormons are now settling, but could get no definite directions, as we met no one who seemed to know much about the country. So we concluded to continue on the main road to El Paso. Nothing of interest occurred on the way. All went well with us. There you go. So, wow. Yeah, I'm going to have to leave that last story for tomorrow, which is searching for genealogy. So, here's what I find fascinating, is that it sounds like in the earlier times, because if you look at the dates, that was 1875. When the Saints first rise, it was the days of 47. So some 30 years passed, or 20 some odd years passed, the arrival of the Saints in Salt Lake Valley is when they're doing this. And they've already got Cedar City established. They've got Southern Utah settlements established.
Bye, gotta go.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Will do.
And you too in the world.
So, I think it's funny because you've got the natives at first. It depended on what was happening in the Indians' lives that would determine their demeanor towards settlers, whether that was good or bad or problem or not. Later on, of course, it sounds like there had been a lot of putting them on reservations. And because of that, I think there was a forced way of saying, hey, you got to settle down and you've got to settle. And here come members of the church teaching them about two major things. First, belief that their ancestors were of good and noble background, and that, hey, we're settling this land too, and if we're settling near you, we can all settle and help and work together. I mean, that's a vastly different approach. I mean, look at the trader and the guy who was there, who's just like, and they probably had bad experiences, but at the same time, there's something that when you believe the best in people, and you show that through that faith and that belief, people rise up to it, especially when I think they're ready to receive it. Because when the reason I put it that way is because many times I think that there are times where at the end of the Book of Mormon, when the Nephites and Lamanites are fighting, Mormon, the editor of the Book of Mormon, is asked to be a captain and a leader of their armies. And he continually cajoles and preaches and teaches and begs them to try and keep the commandments of God. And they would weep and were angry and sad and were regretful, not because they were regretful unto repentance, but regretful at being caught, is kind of how he was putting it. And so when people are on a downward trajectory through their own choices and wanting to cause pain and harm and seeing the results of their suffering and bad choices, you have two ways of feeling that. One is that, wow, I screwed up and I want to change and I want to do better, which is what Mormon was hoping for through his preaching. Or two, that it's like, this all sucks, this all sucks, this all sucks, and they don't want to change and repent. They just hate how things are going, and they don't have any self-reflection. They don't have any desire to do good. They just want what they want, and they want the other people to suffer, and they don't want to suffer. And there's no self-reflection. There's no desire to turn things around and do better. And that's a horror if you're with people like that, because how do you work with them? And Mormon had to deal with an entire group of people who were on that mindset, that they were just sad that bad things were happening, not that it's like, wait a minute, yeah, we brought this on ourselves and we really should listen to God and turn around. In the end, when you have a group of people who have lost so much sense of who they are and their reasons for doing things, they still have traditions and they still have stories, but a lot of them will have been lost. They didn't have anything written down by this point. And so to have the Church of Jesus Christ come through and say, hey, look, you have an ancient and noble history. Your ancestors did all these many great and marvelous things, and you are children of God. You are not some, bottom of the barrel type people. You are worthy of having the Son of God come and visit you, ask you to repent and follow him. And here we're back because all people go astray. And we're back to remind you of this. We're back to say your life can be better and more ennobling than you know. And we'll be settling down here and among you. And hopefully we can all prosper together. It's one of a hope, of trust, of support, of prosperity. Probably a vastly different way of thinking and being treated. And yeah, that kind of benefit, that faith, that trust in God leads to hope, that hope of being able to prosper together and to actually become a better people together. There's so much power in the ideas of living a Zion-like life. And I wish more people were willing to live that, to join in doing what is right and doing what is good. I'm always amazed at the effect that has. I wish I could learn to apply it in more ways. Even in your own family, can you apply it to your children or siblings or whatever else? That it's like, let's prosper together. Let's trust one another and show that belief in the goodness that you have in you. There's a lot to learn, a lot to do, a lot to say. Last one is going to be about genealogy. Now, this is the funny thing. I have very few, but a couple of books by Hugh Nibley that I could read. So, or there is a very small, like probably half the size of this book, that is about a mission to the elk meadows on my bookshelf that I've been meaning to read. And I'm tempted to read that since it's talking about kind of this church history stuff, and just you get transported to a whole different place when you get firsthand accounts from people who are there. I think also there's a huge difference in how you have attitude in each people's writing and their views of different people as they come across them. So it's all fascinating. It really is. I love seeing this history. So if you think I should read the Nibley books, let me know. If you think it'd be good to read the history of Elk Mountain, I think is what it's called. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, yep, here it is. Right here. The Elk Mountain Mission. A history of Moab, Mormons, and the Old Spanish Trail, and the Shebarect Utes from 1854 to 1855. So just a 2-year span. Tom McCourt and Wade Allison. So interesting. So there's this, which has a lot more to do with that specific area, southeastern Utah. And actually, is it? I thought it was thinner than it was. Is it about the same? It is about the same. So would you be more interested in the Elk Mountain Mission or more books by Hugh Nibley? I have to find which ones I got and pick one from among them. But next is about genealogy, and hopefully you've been able to connect with understanding history more, understanding how and what it was like to be from that time and be asked to colonize both north and south from Salt Lake Valley. And I hope it helps you understand the power of living with the Spirit of God with you. How when you try to spread the good news of Jesus Christ, the ennobling power of being a child of God who is interested in you personally, no matter what your circumstances, and no matter what history has happened to you, that you can rise up above it to be something greater. You can be a child of God. I hope that a son of God, a daughter of God, that is a greater worth and a greater impact than you know. With that, I hope the Spirit of God is with you. You have a good day.